Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Poulan Pro BVM200VS handheld blower. Customer complaint is that it won't start. Let's see if it'll start or not. Did that sound right to you? It didn't sound right to me. Clearly it won't start, so they do have a legitimate complaint. Let's see if we got spark. Yeah, we got spark. I mean, it could be the flywheel key is sheared and it's not timed spark, but I doubt it. Let's look in the exhaust here. I can see the spark arrestor screen. It's not plugged. There's no mud dauber nests in there or blocking it or anything like that. If it was blocked up, it would explain the kind of weird sound that I was hearing. Let's take a look at our fuel in the tank. The fuel color looks good, and it doesn't stink. Fuel line, it's there and intact, and there's a clean filter hanging off of it. How about this air filter? Let's see what we got going on here. Comes off of here kind of hard. The filter itself is plugged up pretty good. But if you have a cold engine and a plugged air filter, you're usually going to get a pop out of it. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it just sounds like the air isn't moving right through the engine. I know that sounds weird, but you know, you work on these things all the time and you're exposed to them a lot. You know what feels right and what doesn't feel right. It pulls really easy. That didn't feel right. Look at all this grease and oil here. It's wet. Well, it's wet right there because look at the cylinder. It wiggles on the crankcase. The screws are loose that hold it down, and clearly there's an air leak right there. I mean, the oil would indicate that there's a leak, and it probably explained the weird noise that I heard. So we're going to use a 3/16 Allen wrench to tighten these two screws. And there's only two. If they had 4 screws in this design, I wonder if as many of these would keep coming loose as we see, you know. Problem is I can't get at this one screw. Well, this is a pretty cheap piece of equipment, and I can't spend the labor tearing this thing apart to separate that engine far enough from the plastic housing to get a straight shot on that screw. So we're just going to grind the housing enough to give us that straight shot we need. So see if we can get the wrench in there. Not quite yet. There we go. So, you know, that hole isn't going to hurt anything there. And most likely, most people wouldn't even notice that it was added. But, you know, instead of taking 20 minutes to tear everything apart and tighten the screw down, we took a minute to grind some plastic out of the way and then get our wrench on there. And we got her good and tight right there. Yeah, that's not going to come loose for a while. So this repair, tightening those 2 screws, I'd say about half at a time fixes these things. The other half at a time, that air leak caused enough damage that the thing shot. And that's another reason why I won't tear it all apart to tighten that screw. Well, we just do a quickie grind the housing kind of situation. Because if I wasted even 10, 15, 20 minutes trying to get a straight shot on that screw, I'm not getting that back if this thing's roached. So I'm going to put it together as though that fixed the repair, because it's a 50-50 shot. And technically, if this didn't fix the repair, I don't have to move any farther ahead. I can give the guy his blower back in one piece. It's not starting. Let's try harder. All right. That's a fail. Tightening the two screws didn't fix the blower. Like I said, about half of the time it does and half of the time it doesn't. This was one of the dozens. Now, if you remember the first time I pulled the spark plug out, the plug was dry. There wasn't any fuel moving through the engine, or the air wasn't moving through the engine properly. Spark plug is still dry, even after we fix that base gasket leak. So what else is going on here? It didn't look like the exhaust was plugged. Certainly it could be dry because there's no fuel going through the carburetor, which is actually the case, but why is it not being pulled through? Is it because there's no fuel there to pull through? Or is it because there's an air movement problem not pulling it through? Let's take a look. I'll get this muffler off of here and look in the exhaust port and see what there is to see. We'll see if it's scored or not. So I'm looking in there and I have the answer right now, but I can't really show you decent with the camera setup that I got. So I'm going to pop that cylinder off of there and give you a better look at what I'm seeing. First I want to pull this end cover off. And I'd like to point out that there are times when this end cover can be worn through and have a hole in it and be a source of an air leak just from the connecting rod, or the crank pin I should say, rubbing on it. That's not the case here, but sometimes it is. So I mean, it looks normal here as far as mechanically. Let's get this cylinder off of here and take a look at the piston. Now, mind you, everything I'm doing now is for the benefit of this video. I normally would not go in here and investigate why. I already know it's shot. And customer's just going to abandon the thing. I want to show you what I'm seeing in here. So another reason air might not be moving through the engine is because if the rings are set in the piston, we're not getting the low pressure in the crankcase that is going to eventually draw air in through the carburetor. And the reason we're not getting that low pressure is because we don't have a good seal on the rings to the cylinder. In this case, you'll see how black this piston is. That's from blow-by because the ring is stuck in the groove of the piston. Now, the rings can get stuck in a groove from scoring, and a lean condition would certainly involve that. But this thing doesn't look like it's really scored. It not only is it black from carbon, but you can kind of see a bronzish look underneath that. And I think they ran some older fuel through here for a while. And that old fuel could have gummed up the ring in the piston groove. And it got stuck, and then you end up with the blow-by, and the problem just keeps multiplying until the engine won't run. And I think that's what we have here. The loose cylinder is just another problem that kind of threw us off track as to what really happened here, which I believe is old fuel, stuck piston ring, low compression, as opposed to loose cylinder, air leak, scoring, or something like that. So that's all I have for you on the Poulan BVM200VS handheld blower that went home in a box. Thanks for watching. Later.